My name is Dick Glennon. I'm married to Jacqueline Nickner Glennon, the father of 5 children. And right now we are retired and we're living in our new condominium in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Great. So now how is it that you got here?
How did we get to this particular property?
Yes.
Well, we moved up from Washington, D.C. in the early 90s. And at that time, we had I think just 2 grandchildren. And Jim Glennon had suggested that maybe we should move up to New Hampshire. We were thinking of going to Massachusetts. And since he invited us up here, we decided, why not? And so we bought a house in Hampton, a lot bigger than we needed. But we had Catherine, who was unmarried at the time, and I've forgotten about. And of course, Denise was married but living out of state, and so we wanted room for them. And the thought was maybe there'd be other people who could use our facility there, our house. So we started off with the 2 Glennon children, and they would, Jim and Steph would come over every Sunday. We'd go to Mass and we'd come home and they'd be in the house, and we loved it. And we went through the birth of their next 2, and I can't recall exactly when. We started seeing more and more of the Sullivan family. They had been married, and their children came along a little bit after Jim's. And then let me see who was next. Mary Ann and Dan were married. They were out in Illinois. They had 1 child, and they were infrequent visitors, but eventually they moved into Wilmington, and they had adopted the beautiful little child, Elizabeth, and we started seeing them frequently. And then when the Murphys started their children, we had a crowd. So birthdays were always celebrated at Grandma Jackie's house, and there was mobs of kids, and lots of food, lots of wine, lots of fun. And there would be Easter egg hunts out on the lawn, and I think Jim in particular enjoyed, along with the other guys, going out and hiding the plastic eggs that the children were going to try to find. So that was why we were there. And we woke up last summer, early late in the spring, and came to the realization that we had not seen too many people lately, and that was understandable. There's soccer, there's plays, there are football games, there are all kinds of activities that those grandchildren are involved with, and their parents are involved with it. And so we said, we don't need this place anymore. And we proceeded to put it on the market. And we were very fortunate. We had an excellent realtor. We had staging, which was something I'd never seen of before. They came in and made us did things to make the house look right. We had to take down all our old wallpaper.
How did that feel when they did that to you?
Oh, I didn't care. You know, it didn't bother me that we had to do that. And actually, it really did a good selling job. So I have a friend who I've known through the St. Vincent de Paul Society for some time, and they have a place here in one of the other buildings, and talked to him about it, and he thought I should come over and take a look, and we thought it was just what we needed. It's got plenty of room for us. We have a party coming up in July to send off the Van Roosendahls to New Jersey. And we have the use of a clubhouse, which has a huge area that we can use for just sitting around and eating, and there's a full kitchen, bathrooms, there's things in the basement that your kids can exercise on, all the rest of it. So we've got everything we need here. So that's why we're here.
Great. What was probably one of the most craziest parties or events that you had at that house?
Well,
what was the most amazing or craziest thing that ever happened?
That's really a memorable party. It was the first one we ever had because everyone was there, as I can recall. The hobbles were up, and it was a Good Friday in 2000, and we had just moved in. We had very little furniture in there, but we had what was called Papa Nick's Thanksgiving table, which was something I made out of boards. I never let John Louis see it because he would have laughed. But it was a great big long table, and we had lobsters galore, and we had it in the family room because we didn't have any furniture in there yet, and it was raucous. We had a great time. That was the kickoff. That was probably the best party from the point of view of, there were not all that many little children there. There were just Jim's two, and of course they were being passed around and hugged and kissed all the time. So it was a great party.
Good.
And we've had lots of them since then too.
Right. Yeah, so you guys like to entertain a lot during that time period.
Yeah, there was a period of time when we expected there would be a crowd every Sunday. And certainly every birthday was held at our house. They had their own birthday parties at home, but the idea that you came together with all of the cousins, there was a dining room, a kitchen, and a family room, and all the children with Grandma Jackie would get into the dining room and pick up packages, cake, light the candles, and there's always a procession. We've got all kinds of pictures of those processions, and the birthday persons. Sometimes we had three at a time sit around the dining room kitchen table, looking great, and they wanted to be there for that. They're over that now.
Okay. So, okay, now where were you living before that? And what was the decision making at that time? Because you were living in Washington, D.C. for a while?
Right. I'd have to go back to the beginning where I started.
Okay, let's do that.
I got out of the Navy in late December of 1959, and we moved from Washington to West Roxbury, had an apartment. Stuff was delivered by the Navy to my apartment, our apartment. We had one child at the time, Jim, and my mother. And I started with Pete Morrick Mitchell & Co. the following Monday. We stayed in that apartment for about 14, 15 months, and it was obvious we had to move out because there just wasn't enough for us. We had Denise, was born there. We had two children. We had really no more room, enough room. So my mother and I started looking for places to live because Jackie was very pregnant again with Mary Ann, and we did it in the middle of the winter. And so we found a place in Braintree, Massachusetts, which was a rough, tough house. It had everything you'd think. Today it's probably worth $1 million because it had dining room, living room, kitchen, mud room, half bath, and 4 bedrooms upstairs and a full bath, backyard. It was good. It sounded great on paper, but it was a wreck.
And when you're saying a wreck, was the neighborhood a bit of a tough town too?
Yeah,
or
beautiful
just-
neighborhood, absolutely beautiful neighborhood, and beautiful neighbors. But this place had been neglected, and that's why we were able to get it for $15,500. Jackie was able, through what, I was in debt. I was so, well, I wasn't underpaid. I was paid what I bargained for, but my expenses were so much more that I was always owing people, fending people off, and that worked out over time. So we stayed there for 10 years, and again, we wanted a better place to live and a newer house, so we had a house built in Hingham. And the children, I think, really think of that as the place where they grew up, where they became young adults, and made a lot of friends there that exist to this day. And we were there for 10 years. I progressed through promotions at the firm, and had been a partner in charge of the tax practice in the Boston office for 7 or 8 or 9 years. And a new man came in from to run the firm in the mid-70s, and then he became vice chairman of the deputy chairman, number 2 man in the firm. And he wanted me to move out because he didn't like to have people taking ownership of an office or a department of an office. And that was correct. You have to move out and let other people come along and move. So they put me down into Washington for the last 10 years of my career. That was an enjoyable job, and I think Jackie enjoyed it as well. We started off looking for any kind of a house we could find in Georgetown, because after traveling the Southeast Expressway for 22 years, I wanted to be as close to my office as I could. And Georgetown was the place to be. There was nothing that we could possibly move into except for a townhouse that we thought was preposterous. It had 4 floors, it had 2 baths in the master bedroom with all the other things that you might find in a master bedroom, including a jacuzzi and a bidet, and it was a really funny place to be. And an elevator, of course, and we bought it. Jackie made a lot of friends there, and they got into, I'd forgotten whether it was knitting or quilting, but she did get into that kind of business. And we had parties there as well. Folks came down. The first big party was in the Thanksgiving of 1991, I guess. No, wait a minute. When did I go? No. 1981. And she had all of her family come down. That was what she wanted. And of course, while everybody else dressed normally, your mother and father dressed to kill. He had his tuxedo and she had her long gown, and they swept down the long staircase that came down into the main living room as if there were, Mr. and Mrs. Gottrocks. It was fun. We had a great time. So then I retired. And as I said at the start of it, that's where when Jim spoke up and said, where are you going to stay and where are you going to move to? And I said, well, we thought maybe go back to South Shore. We said, well, we have children up here now. Would you like to come up this way? That's all we needed to hear.
Great. talk to me. I want to know more about what you did for a living because I have no idea what it was that you did. And I know what the company you worked for, but when you first
Well-
started, what was your role? What kind of crises or things that you had to do, and what was the best part of doing that whole thing, and the worst part?
Well, when I got to Pate, Bowers, Mitchell & Co., which was one of what they call the Big Eight CPA firms, at that time it was the largest CPA firm in the United States. They slipped over time. And I was a 28-year-old junior accountant on the audit staff of Pete, Bowers, Mitchell & Co. And started out basically in January, working on audits. That is to say, there'd be a senior accountant and me, and I was the gopher, doing what I was told, and auditing the books of account of our clients. In the summer of that year, I had a project. I was a junior again. All the other juniors looked like juniors. I mean, they were.
What made them look like a junior?
I mean, I was 28 years old, and anyhow, there was a tax practice along with the audit department, and that consisted of a partner, a manager, an assistant manager, and a staff person. And the staff person was not certified. He was not an accountant, so he wanted to leave. And a man who became my best friend and long-term pal, Frank Hoare, was the assistant manager, and he found me and asked me if I would come in. And I spoke to the partner in charge of the tax practice and the partner in charge of the office, and made that move. So I was a junior accountant, tax person. I was called a tax specialist, but I was the youngest kid on the block, the only kid on the block. And what I did at that time was preparing tax returns, individual income tax returns, corporate tax returns. I would do legal research, having been a lawyer, been trained as a lawyer on tax issues. We would assist major clients, big clients that had tax audits. Generally, most corporations in those days had tax audits. And we would defend the positions that those clients took on their tax returns with respect to various and sundry items, and would proceed to what were like mini trials in some cases.
And I'm assuming you went to trial as well?
No, these were all administrative. There was no judge, no jury, no witnesses. The facts were developed by the revenue agent. We would challenge the facts in some cases, but in the other cases we say, so what? I mean, the law says this and you don't think it does, but we know it does, and whatever. So, and it would be done in an office. It wasn't done in a court. It was nothing elaborate. And those weren't every day. I mean, we might do 4 or 5 of those a year, but they were challenging. And because I was the only lawyer other than the partner who ran the department, I did most of that writing. And basically that's where I learned how to write. I had no writing skills at all. I mean, I'm astonished at these kids today that write so beautifully, because they had good training. I never had good traiing.
You were just thrown into the fire.
Huh?
You were just thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyhow, that developed. The tax practice partner was a difficult man to live with because he was extremely demanding and very critical. And I never knew when he was going to get angry with me. as I moved through the years, I came to the conclusion that I was going to do well and that I might move along. And that happened 4 years into the department, into my work in the department. They made me a manager, jumping a slot. Usually, you became a supervisor, and then you became a manager. But they just moved me along. He did. I think he was looking forward to his retirement, and he wanted me to move up as quickly as I could, so that he would be able to move off as he wanted to. And then 3 years later, they made me a partner. And then a couple of years after that, he retired, and I became the partner in charge of the practice, the tax practice. At that time, there was a managing partner who also ran the audit department, and so I was the only department head in the building, in the office. And what I enjoyed the most was hiring people. I really honestly believe I had the best people in the firm. There were about, I can't go back over them all now, but I would say there's 8 or 9 of them at that time. They're all these people are retiring now, but back in the 70s, they were just being hired and moving along into the management group, and then all became partners. I'd say there were about a dozen people that came along. We couldn't use that many partners in Boston, but we moved them out to New York, Baltimore, all over the place. Hmm. They were just terrific people. And come the end of the 70s, and my friend Bob Beecher, who was the deputy chairman of the board, got me to move to Washington, and that was a highly technical group of partners who came out of the Internal Revenue Service or the Treasury Department or Congress, congressional staffers, who were specialists in particular areas of the tax law. The easiest ones to understand would be pensions, accounting methods, very, very, very complex stuff, mergers and acquisitions, international, a whole host of specialties. And their job was to take telephone calls from people all over the firm, that is to say tax persons all over the firm needing help on extremely complex, difficult questions. And when I got there were, I think, 7 people there, 7 or 8, it was like 2 partners, 3 partners, and myself. And I always was believed in expansion as fast as we could. We probably, when I left, we probably had 50 professionals. Those had been all partners and managers in what was called the tax practice side of it. And all along the way, we had purchased a tax, what do I want to call it? I wanted to talk a little bit about 1951.
Okay.
I had told you that I was a miserable student, and my mother wanted me to go to Boston College. The famous story that all of my children have heard, many of their children have heard, was I wanted to go study piano at BU, yes, because my piano teacher was from BU, and he wanted me to do that. And she said, no, you're going to go to Boston College and you're going to study accounting. I said, what is accounting? She said, I don't know. Well, why am I going to study it? She used to go to daily mass, and a man would drive up from Cary Hill, which was where the wealthy lived in Milton, and to daily mass in his Cadillac. and he was an accountant. So he was not only wealthy, but he was pious. So that was my job. So I went to Boston College. I took the exam. In those days, you had an entrance exam to take. And I came home and I said, well, I did 40% of the math, and I didn't even go do that in the history. So I don't think I'm going to be accepted. But all of the GIs that had gone through Boston College on the GI Bill in the mid to late 40s were now gone. And they needed every nickel they could get, so they took me. I could not understand what accounting was for quite a while. And it finally clicked, and I was taking, of course, a full variety of courses as well, English and Spanish and economics and mathematics and whatever, and one course in bookkeeping, basically the elementary accounting. And then I finally clicked, and I thought, that was good. I could do it. So I survived. In my first quarter, I got notices that I was flunking out, which is what I thought was going to happen to me. Sometime in that period, which was 49, I was able to improve myself. And so I ended up with like a B- average or a C+ average. It's pretty good. And then I decided I wanted to do something better, and I started studying. I had some friends from the neighborhood, a cousin, and he had some other cousins, other friends, who were in the elite program at Boston College, which was called A.B. Greek Honors. If you were A.B. Greek Honors, you were really the people to be, in awe of. And in the spring of 1951, which was the end of my sophomore year, I drove them over to Boston College so they could go around and look at how they did. I mean, they posted lists of scores in the various schools, and so we went to them first, and they were always teasing me because I had pencils in my pocket, that you needed to pull out. So, pencils, what do you do with those pencils? So we walked over to my school after they teased me, and there was a list, and I was number one for that semester. Now, back to school in September, I was there a week and my father died. Boom. And everything changed. He had a heart attack. He'd had a heart attack in April, and there was no medicine for that. No, they didn't know how to treat that, how to do that. Just stay in bed for a while. So he stayed in bed for a while, and he went back to work, and he was pulling a battery out of a truck, pretty big, and boom, that was the end of him. So from that point on, I was working all the time. I mean, I had part-time jobs, and that was my high point. I did well all the rest of the next 2 years and graduated, and got a scholarship into Boston College, but that only lasted one year. So somehow or another, I went from being a nobody to being able to understand that I could do something. That's all. So that's why I wanted to talk about when I 15.
Sure.
It was a big year for me.
Yeah, it's a big year. Big changes too.
Yeah.
Huge changes.
All right, what else do you want to hear about?
I want to know how you met your wife.
Oh, that's a story that is hackneyed at this point, to the point we have to show you I don't know what to call it, a collage or whatever that Stephanie made of this event. We'll show it to you afterwards. My brother Robert and I, as I told you, we were living at home together in Milton, and there were dances at Boston in Boston that you could go to the girls and the boys were from schools, supposedly from colleges. You paid $1 to get in. There was a band. No drinks of any kind. Nothing provided. Just the music. You couldn't sit down anywhere. Everybody was dancing. That's all you did. And everybody dressed up. The guys came in suits, or at least a sport coat and pants, and the girls were in high heels and nylons and other stuff. Really fancy. So I said, I'm going to go in. You want to come, Robert? And Robert said, no, I don't want to go. And my mother said, go. Put your coat on and go with him. And he came. And it was in a hotel in Kenmore Square. I've forgotten what the name of it is now. And we walked in. I went into the dance room. You pay $1, you go in. And Robert went into the bar and was watching a hockey game or something on TV. I don't know what he was doing. So I was wandering around looking at, who could I ask to dance? And I saw a girl in a red dress. And I went over and I asked her to dance. And I got her out on the dance floor. I said, that's not the girl I wanted to dance with. I saw her dancing with somebody else. I said, oh, darn. And of course, I got Jackie. And one thing that you did when you were dancing in those days, if you really liked somebody, you danced cheek to cheek.
Oh.
Well, that would take 2 dates. If you just met a girl, not this date, not the next date, maybe the 3rd date, she'd go cheek to cheek. Well, the standard in northern Maine was boys and girls would cheek to cheek, right off the bat. So I said, well, I really got so I didn't know where I was going to go from there, but I was interested in finding out. So we stuck it out. We danced all the dances. There was intermission. And I said, could I buy you a drink? And she said, yes. But you bring my girlfriend? And I said, sure. And she was getting her bachelor's degree in nursing at BC. Jackie was at that time. As a matter of fact, she graduated that year. It was a 2-year program. And Connie Charette from Van Buren, Maine, was her roommate. And she came with us. And I said, Robert, push over. And Connie sat next to him. And Jackie sat next to me. And when it was time to go dancing, we went dancing and they stayed there. And that was in, say, January of, let's see, they married in 56, so that was January 55, and they married a year and a half later, and it was like 3 years for us before we could get married, so that's how I met her. And at one of Jackie's big birthdays, Stephanie's chore was the book, which is something that she is superb at. And she prepared a bound book with a lot of pictures in it, but the front of it shows a figure of a girl who was really sexy looking and in a red dress, and then you push a little button and there's a picture of Jackie. Darn! So that's 1951, and how we got a hold of Jackie. Yeah, that was 55. Going home, met Jackie.